Welcome back to Jacques in the Garden. It is November and we are going to tour the garden because I've spent the last month resetting and refreshing every single square inch of not just the garden, but the yard. I've put new compost down, new mulch, new plants, and I've got to say it looks absolutely fantastic. One of the things that we've been doing a lot lately is actually hosting people outside and entertaining. So I also want to show you some of those spaces that I don't really show you on the regular. But first, we got to take a look at the garden because I am dying to talk about it. It hasn't looked this good at this time of year in a long time. Now, of course, there is the classic here, which is my ancient kale bed. At this point, it might be 3 or 4 years old. I'm not entirely sure anymore, but it is still looking really vibrant and healthy. I have a ton of nice new leaf production, no real aphid pressure or anything like that. And this is all just 3 plants that keep on branching. Now, one of the things I want to talk about in this tour is how I'm also changing the maintenance of my garden. One of my old practices that I've just kind of got used to is when I have a bad leaf, I would take it and just throw it on the ground to compost in place. Now, in theory, that works out really well if you have no disease or pest pressure. But if I have like an aphid on this and I just throw it on the ground, that aphid's gonna end up crawling back up the plant and reinfect the same plant I just tried to treat. So this year, I'm actually going to stop doing this kind of messy piling of matter on the ground and start moving everything into the compost. And on my left here, I actually have a little baby spinach bed, which I just realized I almost stepped on. The spinach is very young. I just transplanted it in the other day, but this is really the time of year you want to grow spinach because it doesn't like sunlight and it doesn't like heat. And this is a great time to have all of that. Now, as we work our way down the garden, I'm really happy because I've got a wonderful companion planting here of lettuce and peas. It's really the best use of peas in your garden is wherever you have any sort of fence or anything that a pea tendril can wrap itself around. This goes for shelling peas, sweet peas, snow peas, snap peas. They really don't take up a lot of space. They're only vertical and it allows you to really get a lot of food production in the same amount of space. So here I have the front all with romaine lettuce, which looks wonderful. And behind it, the peas are gonna be able to climb their way up into the sunshine. I get 2 crops out of the same bed. And this is literally maybe not even a foot wide. So that's pretty nice little way to pack in more food in your garden. And on my right here is actually some of the earliest broccolis that I've put into the garden so far. Now, I will say that I wish they were twice the size that they are now, but this garden really just doesn't get that much sunlight. There's a lot of obstructions around me here, which end up slowing the growth down quite a bit, but at least everything looks healthy and I can definitely see little baby broccolis on the way. I also want to call out over here is the new perpetual spinach green chard. This has been a variety I've been trying to get at botanical interest for quite some time now, and I've been growing it and I'm very pleased. It makes these really cool giant leaves. It's very productive and it's not as minerally as a lot of the other chards. So definitely recommend you guys check that one out if you're looking to shake things up in your world of chard. Now, everything in this side of the garden is going to be stuff that I harvest on a more regular basis. So I have broccoli, chard, and over here I have some broccolini. These are all crops that get harvested on a regular basis. It's not like a cabbage where I cut it once, that plant's done, and I go inside. These are guys that are regularly harvested. That's why I also have my cherry tomatoes here, which yes, do grow and produce in San Diego in the winter time. But anything that I'm going to be using maybe every other day or every day needs to be in this garden close to the kitchen. That's why I also have greens here like my sorrel and my mizuna. I have some snap peas and shelling peas coming up on this trellis as well. So that's really exciting. You want them front of mind so you could see them and harvest them as they're ready. Now this bed does have tomatoes. It's kind of a weird one. I should have flipped this already, but I'm mostly waiting for my cover crop of mustard, which you can see at the base there, to finish growing before I terminate this bed. There's really no point in killing these tomatoes early if I can't use the bed anyway, because it's growing a cover crop. So in case you're wondering why I still have slightly larger tomatoes, the cherry tomato is fine all winter long, but these guys don't really produce that well in the wintertime. There's just not enough light. Now, another one of the interesting things that Kevin has historically made fun of me in the past for is my tree collard. Now this tree collard has gone a little bit crazy. It's just one plant, and right here you could see 1, 2, 3, 4, about 6 side branches that got so long they actually fell over and toppled onto the ground. So I decided, well, we're probably gonna have another seed swap coming up in the spring. So I'm trying to propagate that, and I'm trying to propagate this by actually air layering it. Oh my God, it's actually rooted. So I didn't set this up too long ago, but take a look at this. What I did is I buried the branches scratched the bark a little bit, and then buried it in soil. And all of this right here is new root development. So now, if I wanted to, I could cut it right here, put this in a pot, and give this to somebody who actually will appreciate my tree collards. But my other plan, let's see if Kevin even watches my videos, is I'm actually gonna sneak one of these in his garden and see if he even notices. That way, I could reverse troll him with my tree collards and make fun of him for keeping it for too long. So that's kind of a little down low. Don't give him any tips or hints because I want him to find it himself. Now, as we work our way over, I have my pollinator patch, which kind of frozen in time right now, hasn't really done much, but I do have this nice little bed of lacinato kale here, which will take over the kale that you saw hanging out above my tree collards back there. It gets better sun exposure here, and overall, it's already looking much better in my opinion. Now, right behind it, I have this tiny little raised bed, which is actually full with about 30 to 40 saffron corms. Over there, you can see a little spent flower. It's just a little purple dainty flower, but the thing with saffron is each one blooms once, produces 3 little stigmas. Those are the saffrons that you actually separate and use to cook. So you're not getting a whole lot of saffron out of this bed. Even if every single one of those bloomed and I collected it, I don't think I would even have like an ounce of saffron. It would just be like 90 threads of saffron. So enough to make a couple meals, but not enough to like go to market. The bed here, the 4x8 cedar bed, is actually doing really well. I have some cherry tomatoes as well. These are actually technically a grape. And what's crazy is look at these flowers here. They're going crazy even at this time of year, still producing plenty. That's the beauty of these smaller tomatoes, is they just don't need as much sunlight as something like a beefsteak or let's say a paste tomato. They could still set flowers with less sunlight that the winter gives them. The rest of this bed is more of that green chard. I have some broccolini here, some radicchio, a couple lettuces, and some calendula that hopefully will bloom soon. I will say the radicchio is absolutely beautiful. This is one of those plants where it's very bitter. It's kind of an acquired taste. I will probably end up cooking it. It's one of these greens that you don't eat like a salad. You eat it more like a cooked green because gotta tone down some of that bitterness a little bit. At least I do. Behind me, I have my little mini orchard, which has my 2 apple trees. Still looks super happy and healthy. And my rhubarb is absolutely incredible this year. I've never had my rhubarb get that big before. It is producing stalks like crazy. The leaves are bigger than usual. And the stalks are about 1 to 2 foot long at the minimum. So I'm very excited to see that because I love rhubarb pie, rhubarb crisp, and anything rhubarb. And speaking of rhubarb, another sort of tart vegetable, or flower in this case, is the roselle hibiscus. So this is where hibiscus, or jamaica as we know here in Southern California, comes from. It's from this really beautiful flower. Now this is something you might have seen in your garden before without knowing, and that's because things like okra are in the same family. So it looks very similar to the okra flower or the mallows. And the way that this works, the part that you're actually getting tea from is not the flower, but it's actually once the flower is spent, you can actually remove this bud. In this case, I did it a little bit early, so let me find you a better example here. So over here, we have one that's already spent, so you could see the flower's already dried up. What you would do is remove that, and this part is actually what's used for the tea. You could eat this entire part here. It's like a little succulent leaf. It's very astringent, tart. It's like eating a cranberry that's actually a little bit sweet. So I'm definitely going to be making my own hibiscus tea this year, maybe my own jamaica if I get adventurous. And speaking of other harvests, actually right here, I have my pomegranate. This is a pomegranate I planted this year from a potted plant, and it is just about ready to be harvested. With pomegranate, you want it to get that nice color on the skin, and you want to start seeing facets forming. Once you see some flat walls forming, that's a sign that the pomegranate has fully matured. So this one is probably ready. It could wait another week or two. Will probably be even better, and that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Now on this side, I have a couple interesting things. I have the last of my eggplant here, which is looking absolutely beautiful. The Anea eggplant. I actually have plans for this tonight. We're gonna be making some moussaka, and that is a lovely Greek dish that is very delicious with eggplant, potatoes, and some sort of minced protein. Very excited to eat that tonight. It's gonna be the last of my eggplant harvest. Then what I'm going to do is trim these plants down until they're about this tall, overwinter them in the ground, and then plant other brassicas around them to help suck up some of the water so my eggplant doesn't drown over the winter. On my left is, again, a tomato that's only here because I have the cover crop going. Now this tomato looks a little bit crazy. It's one plant that's been spread out across this entire plain, but honestly, it's still looking quite healthy. It's setting fruit like crazy. So who am I to get rid of it at this point? I really don't have the heart to do it. If it looked super diseased and sad, it would be a goner, but it actually looks really healthy and great. And there's so much fruit on here, it's actually a little bit ridiculous. Now, down here, I'm excited because I've reset and refreshed my wine cap mushroom bed. So it looks like just a pile of straw. You can see I have wood chips around me, the Douglas fir, and then inside here is inoculated spawn that is hopefully, there's little chunks of it in there, hopefully starting to spread through the wood chips and the straw. And some point after the rains, maybe we'll get a nice little harvest. I've had wine caps fruit for me in as little as like a month. Usually it's about 2 months, but I cannot wait. I have historically grown wine cap mushrooms in this exact same bed for about 2 years prior to this now. So this is going to be the third. Every single year I get a great harvest. Right next to it is my red Russian kale. And I should say, anything in this bed has always thrived really well for me. And I think it's because the mushrooms are over right next to it, breaking materials down, providing nutrients, maybe even eating some harmful nematodes in the soil, because mushrooms can do that. I just learned that recently. It's very cool. And so yeah, I think everything that's planted next to it seems to benefit and seems to love it. One thing I want to mention too is that the bed stops where the straw is. That's where I've actually inoculated it. And all this material here, the wood chips, is just there in hopes that the spawn will spread from this bed into the mulch and then rip through my whole garden. That's the whole point. Having the mulch there will allow the mushrooms to spread, but we need some rain to hit us for that mushroom spawn to want to explore these dry wood chips. Now, I haven't shown you guys the patio section in quite a while, so let's pop on over there and take a little peek. This patio area has been one that I've been kind of working at for a while now, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. I recently added the elevated cedar bed here, which has become a dedicated herb bed. It's mostly sort of Mediterranean herbs, so I have thyme, 2 thymes, I have some lavender, lemon thyme, some oregano hiding all around, a little bit of parsley and chives. The reason why I put this bed here is because the other herb bed, which we'll see in a second, gets a little bit more shade. So I wanted something that got more direct sunlight so I could get my thyme to thrive year round into the winter. And also just looks really good here, especially alongside the brick. Now, as we wrap our way around, you'll see that this is Cosmo's favorite seat in the house here. He always likes to sit here while I work outside and just basically be a lazy boy, but he's earned it. He's definitely earned it. It's basically his chair now. Now behind him, I have a bunch of random potted plants. I have some roses, a bougainvillea, my lemon guava, my olives, which this year I didn't get to harvest. Very sad about it. I missed the window on it, but next year I will get many more harvests out of this olive tree, and I'll cure them up and eat them on a video for you guys someday. The plumeria is on its way out. It is basically starting to drop its leaves, which means that soon I will stop watering it. If I had one piece of advice for anyone growing plumeria, the only thing I've ever heard is if it has leaves, water it. Once the leaves are gone, stop watering it. So that's what I do to keep it alive, and that's what I intend to do to keep this guy going. Wrapping our way around, I have my bay leaf here, which gets heavy picking and use. Every time I make a pot of beans or soup, I come out here, grab a couple bay leaves and use them fresh. It's a really wonderful addition to the kitchen. My mint, my blueberries, which are right now going into dormancy. San Diego gets a little bit weird with dormancy. They never know what to do because we never get cold enough, but it is at least trying. Besides that, I basically have some lemongrass here, a little baby lime, my bear's lime, and my giant stand of barbecue rosemary. The reason why this one is called barbecue, something I haven't talked about a lot, is that it makes these very long, slender stems for the rosemary. And then what you could do is you could strip all the leaves back, and then you could skewer things and make shish kebabs right on the rosemary itself, and it provides some of that wonderful rosemary flavor to whatever you're grilling. So that's a really fun one to have around. Now this is the main herb bed. It still has my basil, my Italian basil, my monstrous Thai basil, which is basically taken over for this bed. But this will transition out. I'll start cycling in some other stuff. I do somehow still have a bunch of French tarragon, which is the first year it hasn't died back for me in the summer. It just kept producing year round. So I'm very happy about that because we really like our tarragon here. And one other thing, I actually have a Valencia tree here, which is my favorite citrus. If I had to choose just one citrus for sweetness, it would definitely be the Valencia orange because they are so incredibly sweet. They're not as easy to peel as some other ones, but in my opinion, they have the best flavor. So I'm very excited to harvest this. Probably not until next year. Citrus needs a cold period in order to thrive. And right behind me is an area where I don't know if I've ever shown you guys, but this is the main area we do all of our entertaining and hosting at, especially when we're outside, of course. because this area is a little protected pocket in our entire yard. The house here blocks a lot of sun and wind, which is really great in the winter because that cold wind can be really intense at night. And in the summer, it provides so much shade from the trees, the house, that it never gets that hot here. So this is basically the only place where we like to entertain. It's big enough. I have my pizza oven here, and I love hosting and entertaining people here, especially at night. Now I did add a bunch of new lights here, so I want to check it out at night. So we'll come back a little bit later. So now let's take a look at the greenhouse because I've been starting to get a feel for how to best use it. In the summer, it was a challenge because it was so hot. And now in the winter time, I'm trying to find the best use for it. Honestly, the winter time, best case scenario, put strawberries in your greenhouse. I've never had my strawberries do better than when they are actually growing here in the winter time. It's not even winter yet, it's still fall, but I'm getting tons of food production. I've been coming out eating a berry or two every day, not telling anyone else in the household about it. But the other things I'm trying to push here in the season is I have some summer squash, which honestly, so far hasn't done that great. I don't know if it's not hot enough, if it's not getting enough light, but I want to just try to push the season on every one of these plants that traditionally I only grow in the summer. So I do have some tomatoes, which as you could see, have mostly just been growing vertically. There's literally, oh, there's one flower on here. So I think this guy's done. I'm gonna rip it out. But the peppers have produced. Actually, missed this one yesterday. Got a wonderful, nice little sort of Italian pepper here, and it looks great. So I am still getting pepper production. I have my sweet potatoes I need to harvest. My turmeric is starting to die back, so soon you guys will see a harvest of that as well. But that's pretty much the main use right now. I will be doing some seed starting in here pretty soon. I have a couple right behind me, but basically I'm just trying to push peppers and some tomatoes into the winter to see what I could get out of it. Now, that garden is looking really good as well. And I also have this crazy cover crop bed that I really want to show you guys. Welcome to the north garden, which is the bigger half of my two gardens. And right here I have one of the new trees that I've added this year. This year I actually added a lot of fruit trees. You saw the 2 apple trees back there, but right over here is a 4-in-1 plum tree. So this is 4 different varieties of plum grafted onto the same rootstock. It's looking pretty healthy overall. I'm hoping that next year I will get some fruit since it was able to branch so heavily this year. Now, one of the other things I'm working on is eventually refreshing the entire chicken run because it needs a lot of time, love, and care. But for now, I am adding our 3-minute raised bed here. This is our cedar bed with the extension kit. I wanted something a little bit taller here because I do have a lot of tree roots, especially with the new trees I just planted. So having a little bit of raised soil area will make competition for anything I plant here much better. And speaking on trees, right behind me, I actually also have 2 more trees that I added this year, which are both pears. These are both European style pears. One is called the Hood European pear. The other one's called Florida Home Pear. Honestly, not the best name for either one, but both of them apparently have low chills and should work here in San Diego. Now, this is one of my biggest sweet potato plants that I've personally grown. I've sort of tried to contain it, but it is sprawling about 10 feet into the chicken run that way, 10 feet over here, and it's all concentrated in that little pocket here. I will probably harvest this within this month. I usually harvest my sweet potatoes around November, but in the meantime, I have planted the bed with cauliflower. So I have all these young cauliflower seedlings in here. Hopefully they'll size up in time for the winter light to be enough and actually get a great harvest out of this bed. This is the bed that gets the least amount of sun from all of these raised beds because it is in this corner, but everything seems to do just fine in it. Now over here is my first garlic bed that I've planted this year. This is a 4x8 bed. So I have right around 100 to 120 heads of garlic growing. I do have this chicken wire on here to discourage raccoons and possums from digging in my garden and skunks. And some of the garlic has actually emerged. So I'm very happy to see that it is indeed alive and thriving. And I actually want to do a quick note on my trellis here. Usually I have this covered in some sort of climbing crops. I have some old beans on here that I need to harvest, just waiting for them to turn dry. But in this time of year, I don't have that much stuff that likes to actually climb up something on an incline. Usually at this time of year, the only climbers I have are peas, and they really want a vertical structure because they don't wrap around, they send out tendrils. So I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna just plant regular stuff around it. So surrounding this entire trellis, I have cabbages, I have cauliflowers, I have a couple broccolis. I'm just gonna use it as regular garden space. I do lose the whole center, but I plan on turning that into a mushroom bed, so no real loss there. And now over here is the oldest and biggest of my cauliflower. Actually, not sure, not quite out of head yet, but it does have plenty of big leaves. And this has been a bed, actually both of these beds have been getting dug up by those critters like crazy. So I went ahead and covered everything with our cages, and I'll show you in a second, they have actually tried to get in there regardless, but the cages have held up. Now, in terms of summer, I do still have some summer plants here. Now, of course, I do have my tomatoes in the other garden, but these peppers are definitely on their way out. The only reason I'm holding them is because I'm not sure if I'm gonna put garlic here. I did prep a little patch in my front yard to plant the rest of my garlic if it doesn't all fit out there, because this year I'm planning on growing 600 to 800 heads of garlic. I only have 100 in there, so I still have quite a bit of ways to go. And so basically I'm holding this as backup. If I run out of space in the front yard, this will be another garlic bed. If not, it'll just be another brassica bed. Now behind it, I did have some tomatoes growing in the summertime. All of that has been flipped over into broccolis. I have a couple Brussels sprouts here. This year I only planted 3 Brussels. Usually I do a lot more, but in San Diego, you never know if you're actually gonna get a harvest from your Brussels because the spring is so temperamental. But this year I cut back severely, and I think it will be a much smarter idea because it gets so sad when you wait all year long for those Brussels sprouts to arrive, and then you hit spring, you get a heat wave, they get covered in aphids, and you get literally nothing in return. So over here is where I had the damage. I had a lot of digging, and back here, I just noticed this morning, they almost dug out one of my lettuce seedlings. They started digging on the edges of this bed, but because of these cages, they don't like the way this feels. I've actually caught them on a GoPro before at night, and they touch these and they don't like it. So it's protected everything else inside this bed. It's helped me from not losing these cabbages, because at this time of year, things grow so slowly that if you lose this plant, like something this size, if I start a seed today, it's not gonna get anywhere close to this size for a minimum of 6 weeks, probably 8 weeks. At that point, it's basically spring. So you really want to baby your plants at this time of year because any loss can really set you back quite severely. Now over here is actually a bed that I had tremendous success growing bush beans this year. I had such an incredible harvest of bush beans. I left the roots in the ground to lock that nitrogen in, and I've gone ahead and replanted it with more broccoli. That is the season. It is broccoli season here in San Diego. I love it. We love eating broccoli fresh out of the garden. It's so much better than literally anything I've bought from anywhere or anyone before. So we definitely overload on it, and we like to gift it to our friends as well. Now back here, since this is the furthest bed, this is the cedar bed that I burnt using the Yatsugi or Shosugi barn method, where I then sealed it with some tung oil, and it still looks really, really beautiful. It's definitely the most beautiful wooden bed that I have in my garden, and I love the way that it's looking, and it's actually holding up just fine. I have a bunch of cabbages here because this is the furthest bed from the garden. Cabbage is something you harvest once the plant is done, so that is why the most inconvenient harvest is the furthest away from my back door. Now, the hugelkultur mound, which is still a nice little mound here, I just haven't replanted. I keep getting lost on what I want to put in here. And you can see how dense this is because I'm standing on it. It's not sinking at all because there's tons of buried wood and logs in here. I'll probably end up planting some grains again because they did so well in this bed last year. Behind my hugelkultur bed is my pride and joy. This is from my video on how to grow a fruit tree faster than multi-year whole. And this is a peach tree I planted as a bare root literally this year. I think it's been in the ground now for maybe 6-7 months at the most. And this thing looks like it's been here for at least 5 years. It is insane how much this tree has grown. The trunk itself is insanely thick. And I'm sure all that whole preparation I did in the soil here really made this tree feel at home because it is a stunner. It has tons of buds. Next year, I'm definitely going to have to thin fruit because this thing is probably gonna try to put on like 200 to 300 peaches. I'm only gonna let it do maybe a couple dozen, maybe 50, we'll see. But I want quality peaches, not just quantity. And speaking of the cover crop I mentioned earlier, this right here, this beautiful bed, if I could just grow cover crops as a gardener, I would, because what looks better than just a field of green? This is the Mighty Mustard Pacific Gold cover crop, and it has one specific goal, or at least I planted it with one specific goal, and that is to destroy and kill any root knot nematodes or fungal diseases that might be present in the soil. So as soon as this flowers, I actually saw a flower bud somewhere in here the other day. As soon as all this flowers, I'm gonna chop it, drop it, incorporate it into the soil, and then wait about a month and plant into it. And this soil will probably be the best soil in my entire garden once that is done. So very excited to get that process done. But now we'll come back in a few hours when it's nice and dark because I had just installed a bunch of lights across the garden. I want to show you guys what that looks like and the entertainment area at night. As you guys can see, it is nighttime and I've added a lot of light throughout the garden. And I haven't shown Kevin any of this, so I figured let's bring him in. I'll show him the garden at night and all the new lighting. He's been over for dinner here in the yard, but it's been a while since I've actually upgraded the space and he has not seen it yet. So he should be here any moment now.
Appearing on the channel once again.
He has
For 2 years.
every 2 years. It's tradition to have Kevin on the channel at least once a year. I do Apple Cabbage other time.
Little inaugural, right? Little annual.
So I figured I just did this revamp on my outdoor seating area. You've been here for pizza before.
Oh yeah.
And you've seen my
A
skill.
little more when he's not here, but it's all good.
Oh, I didn't know about that. Actually, he did break into my shed at night. So that is true. But I did add a bunch of new lighting. I cleaned up the vibe space. So I wanted to do a quick little tour and show you around.
Let's take a look. I mean,
So-
this is something I'm missing in my homestead.
Is the nighttime vibe?
I don't have the nighttime vibes at all.
Yeah.
Like there's a little bit of lighting that's like hardwired lighting on the floor, but I don't have this like little sprinkling, dinkling of light throughout. So why don't we? So you've got the umbrella lighting.
Yeah, the umbrella lighting is great. The cool thing is, like all the hose link lights that I've added throughout the garden are actually solar powered. So you don't have to like run wires.
So all of it is solar.
Exactly.
These guys are so even the string lights over there.
Yep. I actually have all
solar.
Oh, wow. 100% solar.
Okay.
I have like over there on the little wall there, there's a little solar panel and that's where you trigger it on and off. You could do it like at nighttime or daytime.
This is actually really nice at night. Like you don't need it to light up the space. Like if you've got moonlight and you've got the city light, but you need these little accents.
It's more of like an ambiance.
Yeah.
And on
This is a
camera, it's
fall
even
vibe.
harder to tell. It's a total fall.
This is a fall vibe for sure.
I know. And having it through the garden is just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Because the main seating area
Is
is over here.
And this is well lit.
This is
So
well
This is
lit.
something that you had. I remember this lighting from before. I don't remember these guys.
No. So
Little-
these are the little camp lanterns that are
Little
also
lit.
solar chargeable.
Oh, silicone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think it's so that you can't break it in your tent and like cut yourself.
That's kind of nice. All
Yeah,
right.
I actually use them to walk around. Yeah, a little walk around light.
So did you put some in this? This is in the greenhouse?
Yep.
This is solar?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so I have the little panel. I'll show you that.
Yeah, dude, solar on string lights I never thought about it. It's a
I know.
clever idea.
I know it's really convenient because I could just turn them on and off.
Wow.
But like right here, I have this little shelf
Yeah.
and I've got the panel. So that's just collecting light throughout the day. And basically, next time it
Wow.
rains, catch me in the greenhouse at night. I'm gonna be in here.
Twinkle, twinkle, little star. You know, like, well, how long will that run for on solar?
I don't know. I actually haven't had them die on me. They'll, even if they die, they'll just charge throughout the day and then they'll just turn.
You'll just reset the next day, right? And then you got the shed.
Oh yeah. I mean, basically the idea is I draw people in with light to everywhere where I want them to go at night.
It makes sense. I mean, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm all the way in. Another solar hose link one, right? Coming through. Oh, you're using the sunroom.
So this is when I'm still testing, but I think through the skylight here, I should get enough light to charge.
Little
it.
reflection.
So far it hasn't died. There's light coming in. I've got my mushroom factory here,
Yeah.
my podcast studio here.
We now know what's in the shed, guys. We don't know what was in the old shed necessarily, but we know what's in the new shed. It looks pretty good.
Lighting game needs to be stepped up.
It
But
does.
honestly, these like hose-link solar lights, I've really appreciated how easy it is. No cables, very good lighting, not too bright.
Good for outdoors.
Just
Because
nice.
to me, like the alternative is you do a hardwired system. Like I have a little bit of one going, and unless you know electronics or you want to actually do it, pay for it, it's like pretty expensive. It's pretty expensive.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I like it, man.
Cool.
Gave me some good inspo.
Yeah, next time I'll have you over for pizza and we'll actually enjoy it a little bit better. But thanks for coming to check it out.
Of course, anytime.
Thanks, hose-link, for the lights, and thank you guys for watching.